the welcome chosen ones. What if I told you that those who sought to diminish you were in truth architects of your triumphant story? It sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? But history whispers this truth repeatedly. Consider this: the grandest resurgences in history often emerge from the ashes of utter devastation. Great empires crumble only to rise again more magnificent and prosperous than before. Think of Rome consumed by flames, yet from its embers arose a civilization that shaped the world. Now let's bring this closer to home. To you. They believed stripping you bare was the definitive end. They thought that by severing your bonds, shattering your peace, tarnishing your reputation, depleting your resources, and eroding your very sense of self, they could extinguish your light forever. They fancied themselves the authors of your final chapter. But here's the plot twist that will haunt their dreams: the divine author never allows a thief to dictate the ending of your narrative. Isn't it ironic? Those who toiled relentlessly to dismantle you are about to require front row seats to witness your celestial promotion. Picture them scrolling through your life's unfolding chapters, whispering, "Didn't we cancel this one?" No, my dears, you didn't cancel me. You merely financed my double-portion comeback. This transcends mere survival. It's about divine reversal. You may have lost what could be stolen, but you are on the cusp of acquiring what is eternally untouchable. They endeavored to strip you of everything, but the divine is poised to restore double for your distress. And believe me, that double will leave them speechless in disbelief. First, they snatched your garments, but not your crown. They attempted to divest you of all you possessed, but they could never seize the crown that divinity placed upon your brow before your very first breath. This crown is not fashioned from gold or jewels. It is forged from divine authority, purpose, and boundless grace. And here's what ignites envy in your adversaries. It is invisible to the mortal eye, yet undeniably potent in the spiritual realm. They could tarnish your name, sabotage your opportunities, even plunge you into seasons of scarcity, but the crown remained steadfast. It remained where the divine placed it, untouched, unshaken, and unyielding. When others conspire to humiliate or diminish you, their true motive is to make you question your inherent worth. They seek to drag you so low that you doubt your very identity. But what they failed to anticipate is that your value is not derived from material possessions, titles, or even the fleeting approval of others. Your worth is intrinsic, encoded within your very being. That is why, even stripped bare, you exude an inexplicable authority that confounds your onlookers. They believed they could humiliate you into oblivion, but the crown renders you unforgettable. The exquisite part is this: the crown requires no fanfare to be real. You need not flaunt it or prove it. It possesses its own inherent evidence. Even in your darkest hours, your presence resonated. Even when overlooked, there was an undeniable quality about you. That is the crown. And because it is divinely bestowed, no scandal, no falsehood, no betrayal can dislodge it. The more they strived to strip you bare, the more evident it became that what they coveted was not on you, but in you. This is why restoration is inevitable. The divine sees not merely what was taken from you, but the enduring crown. That crown is the emblem of your inheritance, the irrefutable proof that you were never disqualified, only momentarily delayed. And now in restoring you, the divine is not merely returning what you lost, but multiplying it in alignment with the crown you have always borne. They perceived emptiness, but overlooked the most profound truth. A crowned head can never remain in shame. That unseen authority is poised to manifest into tangible blessing. The crown endured, and because of that, a double blessing is imminent. Second, their thievery became heaven's exhibit. Every time they deprived you of something, they believed they were victorious. They assumed that stripping you of resources, opportunities, and even peace signified their dominance. What they failed to grasp is that with each act of theft, they were etching their own judgment. Heaven does not turn a blind eye. Nothing taken from a child of the divine goes unnoticed. And every hardship you endured was meticulously recorded in the celestial courts. The very things they plundered became evidence against them, and the ledger of restoration began to overflow with your name. That explains the inexplicable weight you've carried at times. It wasn't solely the pain of loss, but the weight of divine accounting. The divine does not restore randomly. Precision guides every restoration. Every tear is recorded. Every betrayal is recorded. Every door slammed in your face is recorded. Heaven observed as they tried to strip you, and instead of leaving you exposed, their actions became receipts guaranteeing your double portion. This is a facet of divine justice that many fail to comprehend. They mistakenly believe that evading consequences temporarily means eternal immunity. But in truth, every act of injustice bears a spiritual timestamp. It may not detonate immediately, but it accumulates until the appointed time of reversal. That is where you stand now, in the season where evidence transforms into elevation. Your restoration is not born of pity, but of undeniable proof. The losses they deemed irrecoverable are the very reasons you are about to ascend beyond all expectation. And here's the revelation that will shock them the most. Restoration rarely occurs quietly behind the scenes. The divine often restores publicly in the very arenas where they attempted to diminish you. It is poetic justice in its purest form. The very audience that witnessed your downfall will also witness your spectacular resurgence, and the divine orchestration will be undeniable. Every stolen moment became heaven's evidence, and every loss became the seed for your double harvest. They believed they were robbing you, but in reality they were funding your restoration. Third, they mistook emptiness for defeat. They assumed leaving you empty meant you were vanquished. In their limited perception, nothing left equated to nothing left to offer. They believed that stripping you of connections, finances, opportunities, and even self-assurance would finally eradicate your influence. What they failed to understand is that emptiness is not the end. It's the genesis. In the divine realm, emptiness is never a death sentence. It's a fertile ground for new beginnings. When all that is familiar is taken away, new blueprints are drawn. What appears as nothing to the human eye is the precise environment where the divine manifests the extraordinary. Being empty revealed a truth that eludes most. You were never carried by the possessions you lost. They assumed those external elements defined you, but when all vanished, you remained. That very survival is proof of an intrinsic strength. Emptiness unveiled what was authentic and what was never meant to endure. It peeled back the curtain on illusions, leaving you with a clarity that possessions could never provide. What remained was raw, yet unshakable. This renders emptiness perilous to those who opposed you. They presumed it signified your end when it positioned you for expansion. An emptied vessel is primed to be refilled. And when the divine fills, the restoration is not merely to the previous measure, it overflows. Your emptiness created the necessary space for your double portion to land. Without the stripping, you wouldn't have possessed the capacity to contain what is coming. The irony is that the very tactic they employed to destroy you, leaving you with nothing, triggered your transformation. They mistook your quietude for defeat while the divine was re-engineering your foundation. You were being prepared for something they cannot replicate, something they cannot compete with, something impervious to theft. Emptiness was not your failure, it was their miscalculation. And now, the very emptiness they mocked is poised to embarrass them, transforming into abundance beyond recognition. What they perceived as your finale was the divine creating space for your grand re-emergence. Fourth, the fire they cast you into became your forge. The fire they thrust you into was not merely about suffering. It was about profound metamorphosis. What they designed to break you ultimately shaped you. Fire serves a dual purpose. It consumes what cannot endure and refines what is destined to last. Their assaults were brutal, yet each flame incinerated fear, doubt, and weakness that could not accompany you into your future. What they intended for ashes, the divine alchemized. You did not emerge diminished. You emerged stronger, sharper, and impossible to mold back into their control. They anticipated the fire would reduce you to nothing, leaving you in ruins they could mock. Instead, the fire burned away the illusions they once exploited to manipulate you. The version of you overly concerned with their approval is gone. The version that questioned your worth in the face of their rejection is incinerated. The version still learning to stand tall melted and reformed into something indestructible. The fire did not merely test you, it revealed you, and that revelation is why they no longer recognize you. This is the irony that haunts them. The more they attacked, the more they prepared you for the heights they could never attain. Every insult fueled you. Every betrayal served as training. Every attempt to humiliate you secretly chiseled you into someone unshakable. They assumed they were dismantling you, but they were building the warrior they would later regret provoking. They are ill-equipped to handle the version of you that emerged from the flames. You are no longer governed by their words, their actions, or their threats. You have endured heat so intense that what once intimidated you barely registers. You possess a resilience that cannot be manufactured in comfort. It can only be forged in fire. The fire became your forge. Because of it, you now stand untouchable by the tactics that once wounded you. They ignited the fire, but the divine determined the outcome. The outcome is this: you are irrevocably changed. You are stronger, wiser, and too refined to fit back into the constraints they once tried to impose. The fire they wielded against you is the very reason you are unstoppable now. Fifth, what they buried sprouted roots. When they tried to bury you, they believed it was the definitive act. In their minds, stifling your name, silencing your gifts, and dimming your light would signal the end of your influence. But they failed to comprehend that the divine does not treat burial as mortals do. In the celestial order, burial is never the end. It is the precursor to growth. They were not burying you, they were planting you. The deeper they tried to suppress you, the more resolutely you anchored yourself in the divine, cultivating roots that could not be dislodged. Every attempt to suffocate you compelled you to delve deeper. When they buried your reputation under falsehoods, you learned to root yourself in truth. When they buried your opportunities under sabotage, you cultivated roots of resilience. When they buried your spirit with rejection and betrayal, you pressed into the soil of faith until your foundation was unshakable. They presumed they were concealing you, but they provided the environment to strengthen you in silence beyond their gaze and their reach. Roots are invisible, but they are crucial for growth. While they mocked you, assuming they held the advantage, something profound was transpiring beneath the surface. You were being established in ways they couldn't fathom. By the time they realized you were still standing, it was too late. Roots do not merely sustain you. They prepare you to ascend. The season has shifted. What was nurtured in secret is poised to breach the surface. Those who attempted to bury you will be compelled to witness the harvest of what they unknowingly planted. They failed to realize that in burying you, they endowed you with depth. With depth comes longevity, stability, and fruit impervious to destruction. That makes your resurgence undeniable. They anticipated silence, but roots yield life. They anticipated decay, but roots yield strength. They anticipated your demise, but you expanded beneath the surface. You are now rising higher than they imagined. What they buried did not die. It cultivated roots. Those roots are why you are about to flourish beyond recognition. Sixth, they tried to humiliate you into silence. Their aim wasn't merely to inflict pain, they sought to erase you. Each smear campaign, whispered lie, and betrayal was carefully designed to cage your voice. They recognized the power of your words, the unsettling nature of your presence, and the threat your truth posed to their fabricated image. So they attempted to humiliate you into silence, believing that public shaming would compel you to withdraw quietly and never rise. They underestimated the reality that humiliation does not extinguish the chosen. It amplifies them. The moments they thought would strip you of dignity became the fuel heaven used to magnify your voice. As they believed they had shattered your credibility, the divine was endowing your story with greater depth, power, and reach. In the unseen realm, your silence was not silence. It was resonance. The quiet they mistook for defeat was the sound of your spirit echoing where they couldn't touch. In attempting to stifle your influence, they made it impossible to deny. Your pain resonated with a frequency that people sensed without a word. The crowd that witnessed your humiliation now senses the undeniable authority in your presence. What they buried in mockery, the divine resurrected in power. And now here's the twist that unsettles the most: your voice has multiplied. What they attempted to silence in one chamber is now speaking in many. What they sought to crush in a small circle has become a testament for nations. They assumed the sting of humiliation would paralyze you. It burned away fear, shame, and hesitation. You no longer speak seeking approval. You speak from the authority of survival. Your voice is more potent now. They can't control it. They can't dismiss it. They can't outshout it because divine amplification makes drowning someone out impossible. They tried to humiliate you into silence and set the stage for your sound to carry further, louder, and stronger than anyone expected. What they thought was the end of your influence became the birth of your undeniable authority. Seventh their hands took but cannot replace. They thought their power was in what they could take. They plundered, pulling away possessions, relationships, opportunities, and your peace. By removing what you had, they dismantled who you were. They never understood. Mortal hands only touch the surface. They cannot reach treasures divinely planted within you. They cannot recreate your favor. They cannot manufacture divine blessings. Their theft exposed their limits. They can steal material things, not touch the eternal. They can break connections, not sever destiny. They can strip you bare in the natural, not touch the spiritual. Their hands will fall short. What the divine gives is untouchable, and what is restored isn't reduced to what was lost. Losing something reveals their limits. They can steal material things, not touch eternal things. Their theft was temporary. Divine restoration is eternal. Eternal restoration isn't simple replacement, it is multiplication, elevation, reinvention. Now their hands are powerless to replace what they destroyed. They cannot give back the relationships they ruined. They cannot recreate the opportunities they blocked. They cannot restore shattered peace. The divine doesn't just restore, but restores better. The divine needs no hands to return what was lost. The divine's hands are greater. The divine's timing is perfect, making sure you are compensated in ways they can't fathom. They took with flesh but cannot compete with spirit. What was lost to man's hands will be returned by the divine's, and what is placed in your life will be beyond theft, beyond imitation, beyond reach. Eighth, you were stripped to expose the imposters. What looked like loss was your life's revelations. Stripped of things you leaned on, resources, status, even relationships, it felt unfair and humiliating. As the dust settled, something emerged. The people who claimed loyalty, the ones who clapped when you were winning, the ones who swore allegiance, disappeared. Stripping emptied your hands and exposed the imposters. The divine knew what you couldn't see. Some called friends were feeding on your light. Some trusted voices weren't meant to go where you were headed. As long as you had something to give, they stuck around. But the moment you had nothing to offer, their masks slipped. The stripping season wasn't about destroying you, but revealing them. Comfort and abundance stripped you, saw who was truly for you and who was only for what you could provide. This is stripping's brutal beauty. It filters your circle. Loss became the test separating genuine from fake. The ones who loved you didn't need your status or resources. They stayed because of you. The rest scattered when access was denied. It hurt to watch them walk away, but it was necessary. Without the divine removing them, you would have carried parasites into destiny. That stripping became divine protection. Imagine breakthrough, restoration, and double portion reached only to have imposters at the table draining you. The divine ensured your blessing arrives. Only those who can handle respect and honor it will be standing with you. Pretenders disqualified themselves when benefits dried up. So what looked like betrayal, abandonment, and loss was cleansing. You weren't stripped to stay empty, you were stripped so when the divine restores you, the imposters will be gone. Restoration comes and you'll know every person left is real and every parasite is removed. Ninth, they couldn't steal the memory of who you are. They could strip you of possessions, opportunities, and relationships. They could never steal your memory. No matter how much they tried to bury you under lies, erase you from conversations, or distort your image, your essence remained untouched. Memory in the human heart and in heaven's archives is more powerful than any loss. Even when you felt invisible, people couldn't forget you. Situations circled back to you and doors swung open after being shut. The divine ensured your memory stayed alive because memory is restoration's seed. When heaven remembers, restoration is guaranteed. Your character, resilience, and the way you carried yourself in chaos left imprints that can't be erased. People forget the details but not the impact. In the divine system, every act of faithfulness, moment of endurance, and choice to stand tall is recorded. That record is your comeback's foundation. So, dear friends, let's wrap up this powerful message. The core takeaway is this: what others intended to harm you with, God will use to catapult you into a season of unimaginable blessing. They might try to strip you bare, but they can't touch the crown of divine authority within you. Remember, your setbacks are just setups for an epic comeback, a divine reversal that will leave them speechless. Emptiness isn't defeat, it's preparation. The fire they throw you into is a forge, refining you into something unstoppable. And what they try to bury, that simply sprouts roots for a future harvest beyond their wildest dreams. They couldn't steal who you are. Now I'd love to hear from you. Does this resonate with your own journey? Share your thoughts, ask a question, or simply join the conversation in the comments below. Let's build a community of encouragement and support. And finally, if you found this message inspiring, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on future content designed to empower you on your path. We're in this together, in this together, in this together, in this together.